So 5. Hello, welcome to Grad Ireland Career Discovery Week, the latest in our series of panel discussions. Thanks for joining us here this morning. We're here to discuss the impact of the pandemic on particular industries and how they've had to adapt their selection and their application processes. I'm delighted to welcome our panel. We have Michelle Abbey, who's a HR director with Glanbia, and we've Niall Lawler, who's a vice president of professional services with Guidewire. I'm just going to Niall, could you just give us a quick overview of your own job and what it is the Guidewire do?
Yeah, no problem, Rory. I guess, as you mentioned, I'm vice president of Guidewire. So I have two roles. My day job is I'm VP of Professional Services, which it's a global team. We have a group in Dublin. Our largest group is in Dublin. Then we have teams. I have a team in Madrid and Kuala Lumpur, and two teams in the US. But my other job, I guess, is primarily focused on Ireland and the overall Ireland country manager. I would have started back in Guidewire back in 2011, nearly 9 years ago. That have flown by. Don't ask me how they've gone by so quickly. But it was just me on day one, which was kind of scary. I think we have about nearly 400 people now in Dublin. We've grown out a number of functions, from the professional services function that I take care of, to our product development teams, to our customer support teams, to our cloud operations team. So we've an entire function now in Dublin. Just a little bit of background on Guidewire itself. I guess what we do. We're a US HQ, is a software company. Our HQ is on the west coast of the US. I mean, we have offices worldwide, but Dublin is our largest office now worldwide outside of HQ. What we do, we provide a software platform that to the property and casualty insurance industry. Worldwide. I mean, our insurers rely on our software worldwide. We have with 380 customers worldwide from small live on our software, and a number of other implementations worldwide happening as we speak. We combine things like digital core analytics, AI into an overall insurance platform that I guess, if you think about if you're going on getting a quote for car insurance today, let's say, there's a good chance that portal that you're logging in to get your quote on, that somewhere in the background, it's Guidewire driving the analytics and deciding how much premium you should pay, deciding everything to give you back that result. There's probably a Guidewire system underneath that.
Okay.
So that's me. As I said, I'm looking forward to having a chat this morning.
And thanks for joining us. Michelle, just a quick overview of your own role. And Glanbia is a name that everyone's aware of, but just maybe a quick overview of the company as well.
Yeah, good morning, Rory, and everyone with us this morning. Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent people know Glanbia, but I think when you start to talk about, our organization and the scale of it, I think people really are surprised at that. So, for many people, they know that Glanbia is in the food industry, but I think probably we position ourselves more as a global nutrition group. We are headquartered out of Ireland, but we have over 7,500 employees worldwide. We probably have, I'd say, maybe 3 primary business units, one of which would be familiar to a lot of people, but the other 2 maybe not so. So our Glanbia Ireland business is our traditional domestic business that we have here in Ireland. So that is our kind of from the farm, milk from the farm business, our brands such as Avonmore, and the great domestic brands and products that we have here. But the other 2 growth platforms that we've had through through kind of acquisition and kind of growth over recent years have been our performance nutrition business, which is really aimed at sports and lifestyle nutrition. So any of our gym goers who might be with us this morning, if they use protein supplements, potentially will use a Glanbia protein supplement such as Optimum Nutrition or some of the other products that we have. So performance nutrition, a huge area, both in the US and also in Asia. And then kind of the third leg of our stool there is our Glanbia Nutritionals business. So that really is more about flavorings, ingredients, premixes that we might do for other customers. We would make ingredients for the likes of Coca-Cola, Monster, Kraft, and other big names as well. So a lot more to Glanbia than really the traditional business that maybe people relate to more on the Irish side here.
Okay, thanks very much, Michelle. Listen, it's been a very strange year for everybody. We've all found new ways of doing things, challenges, and we continue to do so, both as companies, as people, and indeed as a country. If I can stay with you, Michelle, maybe just since we were just talking, how have things changed for you in terms of the selection and application process over the last few months? What was normal for you, and what are you doing now that shows that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like other organizations, we've all had to adapt very quickly to new ways of working and the new world. And, I think it's testament to all our folks that we did that really quickly. So, traditionally, obviously, we would have run face-to-face interviews and brought people into selection centers and other things that we would have run. But we've now, very successfully transitioned that to remote interviewing or virtual interviewing. And that works very, very well for us. And I think we still get a very good sense of candidates, of their experience, of their capabilities that they can bring to Glanbia. So we're using remote and virtual interviewing with great success. And similarly, we're onboarding employees into the organization virtually and remotely as well. So, putting a very comprehensive plan around what that looks like and maybe doubling down on that a little bit.
Niall, I suppose it's a particular challenge when you look at students and graduates and even employers. It's these days, the whole theme of culture within companies is very important. So what sort of challenges is it for a company like Guidewire to kind of get your culture and your values across to people who are keen to follow a career path in your organization?
Yeah, it is, and it's something we've been hyper conscious of it, in particular in recent months as we've onboarded some new hires. I mean, like Michelle, I mean, we've managed to get on with our recruiting process itself. That has moved to entirely online. I mean, it was a nice mix of a bit of both beforehand, so we didn't have to have dramatic changes. I mean, Guidewire as a company is a very distributed company anyway, so we've managed to maintain that relationship with people who aren't physically there in front of us every day. Like, for example, my team are based in a mix of Dublin, in Madrid, in Kuala Lumpur, with 2 US locations. So we put a big emphasis on trying to figure out ways to virtually get together as a team anyway, even pre-COVID. And when we're onboarding new hires, we try to make sure that they don't just get to know the people that are physically based in the location, the office that's there. So we've had that advantage even pre-COVID anyway, to be able to instill that culture. Now, it is a little bit, as I said, there's a balance of both worlds. In an ideal world, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't like to continue working 100% remote, and most of our people wouldn't either, because there's only certain things that you can achieve more in person, in a real face-to-face conversation with someone. And in particular, on the mentoring side for some new hires that come on, it's nice to be physically located with them. You can see if someone is struggling to get up to speed on something, it's a little bit more difficult virtually. But we've put a few things in place in the last few months. I think we've continued to hire quite heavily in the last few months. I think I've hired and onboarded here in Dublin about 20 people since March. And I guess the cadence of our check-ins with mentors, everyone when they start, they would be assigned a mentor, whereas they used to check in maybe twice a week. We're having them check in now daily just to make sure that everyone is comfortable working from home, that they're getting their head around the training. And our first 3 months at Guidewire, you spend about 3 months training, and so it's just really increasing the cadence of that check-ins with their mentors and that kind of thing is quite important. It's even more important today than it has been in the past.
Thanks, Niall. Michelle, and it's a good point that Niall's made there about it's not just about people who are applying, it's also the reality of starting your career in an environment where you're working remotely. It must be particularly challenging, both for the teams who are taking care of the onboarding and obviously for the person themselves. What are some of the challenges that your team have made you aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and I think just probably on a couple of points that Niall made and we're alluding to, kind of ensuring that people get a very good view early of the culture of the organization and how you do that. And you know, sometimes it's the canteen conversations or kind of bumping into people. But you know, now, yeah, I think we found various different ways of doing that. So teams have now set up things like virtual coffee mornings, for example. You know, opportunities for kind of social events that will be run online now that maybe might have been run in the office previously. So giving an increased opportunity for people to meet other colleagues across the organization, and of course getting people early involved in projects and other things where they can then expand or extend the range of people that they meet. I would just acknowledge as well, you know, the piece that you mentioned as well in terms of the importance of supporting well-being, physical and mental well-being at this time, because that's something we spent a lot of time really working on very closely. And we have a large number of our graduates who probably would spend year one in Ireland, but maybe go to the US in year two. And that's been a difficult piece to be away from home at this time, worried about family, you know, and to be away from home. So we spend a lot of time really supporting our graduates and the graduate program more generally in ensuring not just that they're comfortable what they need to do at work, but also their overall mental health and well-being and physical well-being being taken care of at this time. And
so I mean, no one knows exactly how long this is going to continue, and you know how the situation will evolve. It's also fluid. And I'll address this question to you both, I suppose. Are there any sort of long-range plans, even in terms of either a blended office remote environment in train, or is there any sort of planning going on in relation to that, Michelle?
Yes, I mean, so for us, you know, I think there's a lot of context around kind of the react, respond, and renew sequence of events in relation to COVID, and we're very much in that kind of renew phase now, which is really about planning how do we return people back to the office. And what will those future ways of working look like? And I think, you know, similar to the point that Niall made, you know, we're very much planning for the fact that we will need to support blended working in the future. We'll need to ensure that we're able to provide learning and training opportunities, you know, in a virtual context and do that capability building in a very different way in the future than maybe we're doing today. And that's something in particular in relation to the graduate program that we want to make sure that, you know, we're ensuring as we look at, you know, bringing on our new graduates in September, which we're absolutely committed to doing, which is fantastic. And, you know, how do we develop those capabilities? Where will they be? Will they be on site? Will they be working from home? And how do we set all of that up?
And Niall, I know from speaking to some of your own colleagues in Guidewire that, you know, as a company, you have invested in making sure your people are comfortable at home, that they have, you know, the physical setup that they need. How has that worked? And is that, like, I suppose, you know, doing something like that, is that part of a longer term strategy to make sure that you can just continue to effectively operate for however long that this situation continues?
Yeah, look, it's worked out brilliantly, and you know, I think kudos to our, you know, global management team on I think firstly how they've reacted. It's been it's a human first reaction to this whole thing. So within the first week of this, before any government or anything required us to shut down, we had switched to home working, because I guess our CEO had looked at our CEO's former military background, so he kicked into full military mode. Apologies. Can you skip my video?
Yeah.
My video
for a minute.
And he was, so quickly implemented things like a stipend worldwide of, I think we put $500 per person to set up a work from home environment, to get screens, to get a comfortable working environment that not everyone might have necessarily had already. In particular, graduates who have just come out of college and maybe don't have a comfortable office home setup. So quickly got that in place. Quickly, introduced a number of things to help people, to incentivize people to spend money in their local economy, to let's say to local restaurants, for example. We introduced a stipend to reimburse 50% of the cost of 2 family meals a week, as long as you go and support a local restaurant. That might be doing a takeaway service. So trying to encourage people to just help out local businesses, I think, which is great. I think, in terms of going back to your question around the long-term side of things, I don't think we're going to go one extreme or the other. I think while we are already a fairly distributed company, there's certain parts of the business that need to be there physically in person and meet people physically and work together physically. I think it's a better environment at times for people to learn and people to just build those relationships. But we've all been very pleasantly surprised about how we've managed to get on working remotely. So the company has become a lot more flexible on working from home. I think for the rest of 2020, I'd expect most of our people to stay at home. We might have a small skeleton team that gradually goes back to the office. Beyond 2020, as things kind of open up a little bit more, it might switch to something like a 3 and a 2 or a 2 and a 3, whatever works for individual teams. And really, if people are physically meeting in an office, they're there for a reason. They're there to collaborate on something. They're there to do something like sprint planning. They're there to get to use our collaboration spaces in the office as their intention, I guess, and then people have the flexibility to work from home when they want to get their head down and get stuff done.
So it's very much a mixture of depending on the requirements of the business and people's own, what people feel comfortable with.
Yeah, it can vary from team to team. So we are going to be certainly a lot more flexible in the future, how people work from home and where people work from, how they work, when they work. I think we're looking at that across the board, because we've proved, it can be done. And in a way, I think we've just increased the efficiency of how we do a lot of things as a result of this. Like when you're staring at the screen on Zoom calls 20, 30 hours a week, it can get tiring. We've certainly learned lessons on that side. So there's that extreme too, where people's brains can be fried at the end of the day if you're constantly on video calls. So we've tried to actually introduce little things like, for example, we've recently introduced a no meeting Friday. So Fridays is a no-go zone. Feedback we were getting from guys is, I've spent 30 hours on Zoom meetings. I need a day to get my head down and actually focus without being on camera all the time. So, but the positives on that as well. I think we're actually learning more about our colleagues at times. I think you see a little bit more of a window into someone's life, and then that work with me who are feeding small children while being on calls, and it's just a reality of what we're doing right now.
So. And Michelle, interested what Niall said there about learning and obviously learning about each other and the people that you work with. Is there anything that kind of stands out to you in terms of what you're doing now that maybe you weren't doing at the end of March or April, or how you've evolved any processes within Glanbia?
Yeah, absolutely. If I could, I would just like to recognise that Glanbia is a designated essential service, and to that end, half of our employees across the world have continued to come in to work every day and huge on the session this morning, may relatives who've come into plants and manufacturing facilities to ensure food gets on the table. So I'd like to recognise all of those people this morning, and again, many graduates who we have who perform, you know, very important operations and work within our plants. But for the other population that, you know, have moved remote working, I think again that piece around huge flexibility in terms of how we work and where we work and when we work has had to be, you know, put in place, because, you know, people have had to balance both personal circumstances, and we mentioned, you know, children, dependents, others, as well as, you know, work priorities. And, you know, we've been really, really supportive of all of that and understanding. So to a certain extent, we've had to adjust to, you know, how we work, and, you know, even in terms of how you run meetings, when you run meetings, you know, and what format all of that takes as well. So we've, you know, again, kind of in terms of those ways of working, really kind of looked at all of that for people and given them the flexibility almost to decide how they achieve the outcomes that they need to deliver in the best way for them at this time. So, you know, really empowering people themselves around their own careers and their own work that they're doing.
And for students and graduates who are, you know, they've had, I suppose, their last few months of college have literally just been cut short. For some of them, it's the end of their academic life as such, or this planned phase of their academic life. It's a period of great uncertainty for them. But it's also a period where a lot of them have taken time to develop hard skills, soft skills, you know, maybe volunteer, maybe do some online courses. Just what are some of the things that, and I'll come to you in a minute, Niall, as well, from a Glanbia perspective, would you find particularly attractive on an application from someone who has taken these last few months to kind of develop some hard and soft skills, maybe applicable to your organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great question, because actually even internally we're starting to look at that to say, well, look, what are really the capabilities that have stood out in our leaders even over the last number of months, and what is it that we're looking for? And, you know, obviously there's the traditional capabilities around, you know, really good communication skills and, you know, all of the other stuff that, you know, we look for in a graduate. But I would say if I was thinking about the number one area that we'll be looking for on our applications, it's agility. So somebody who is able to flex very quickly in terms of kind of pace and energy and decision making and how they go about things. We're in a world where there's been huge disruption in the next number of months. That's going to continue for the foreseeable future. We know that. And so our recovery is really dependent on people who can bring that agility, that ability to be able to respond quickly to change, who can adapt to new ways of working very quickly, who has a very good learning style about them. So what are the things, you know, people have learned about themselves over the last number of months in terms of their own priorities and in terms of how this has impacted them personally, and what are some of the things that they've done to help them adapt over the last number of months. So those are the types of things we look for. So number one area I would say would be areas such as agility and with that resilience, I think.
No, would you want that on that?
Yeah, and Michelle stole my answer, but no, look, it's similar in a way. I guess we're having, you know, I think the one thing in our industry and the tech industry that's constant is change. And it's, you know, I guess the world of Guidewire that I joined 9 years ago and today are radically different places. And I think that's the one message that we're trying to get through to our people. You know, you just kind of need to keep on top of what's the latest technologies, what's the latest thing. And thankfully, most of our graduates that come actually bring a perspective, which, you know, because they're on top of the latest cloud technology, the latest, they understand AWS, they understand these kind of areas that guys that have been with Guidewire a decade or so, you know, have to actually adapt and learn that stuff. So in a way, graduates that come in are already cloud native, which is exactly what we actually want. But besides, I mean, we've always historically had a big emphasis on hiring top tech talent. I mean, having the tech skills that you need, you know, is an absolute it's a foundation. It's necessary. It's part and parcel of the job. But it's not just when we're evaluating candidates. For someone that just wants to sit in a dark corner and write code all day, it's just not going to work in the modern software company. In particular, in my area of the business is which is professional services, where we're working with customers every day. So we're looking for people that are very customer oriented and want to communicate with customers, want to communicate with colleagues, want to learn from them, want to work in, I think Michelle mentioned agility. I mean, our entire software delivery model is an agile delivery model where we quickly iterate every 30 days. We have a number of stakeholders involved, from the developer to the customer to the tester to the business analyst, and they all need to work in harmony together. So that's incredibly important. It's not just about the tech skills. It's about when the tech skills is the foundation that we test everyone on, but then the people that we ultimately give the rules and guide wire across everyone are the people that clearly have that attitude that they want to learn, the attitude that they're customer oriented and are strong communicators, and that's in some ways it can be a unicorn at times, but we've certainly found plenty over the last 9 years or so here in Ireland.
Okay, we have some questions coming through that we're going to get to very shortly. But Michelle, I suppose let's hope in a few years when this passes and we have some sort of a resolution to it, we would hope. And someone said, do you remember 2020 when this happened in mid-March, and how long it went on for? Is there any particular story or incident or change or challenge that you particularly recall from the last few months that you would kind of say, yeah, I really remember such and such?
We do recognition awards as part of our kind of corporate town hall process, and very often you have to chase people to kind of get some of the stories out of the business. But we've been absolutely overwhelmed, in the last month in particular, when we've done those town halls, of all of the huge examples of colleagues wanting to recognize each other for the great things that are happening across the business. So it's very, very difficult to kind of pick out one particular story. However, what I will say is one thing, and this is maybe a little bit about the culture in Glanbia, is that through all of this, and that's why while we internally have gone through huge change, what's really resonated and stood out so much for me is our ability to remember our communities in which we work, how we work with the likes of our farming communities, the work that we have done to support frontline workers and other things, and not just in terms of kind of financial donations, but just in terms of other work and other things that we have done to support the communities in which we live in. So there's lots of stories that we can draw on as part of that, but that for me really resonates, because it's not just about us internally and our change, it's also about the impact that's been out on our communities that we live in and the work that Glanbia has done with those communities in recent months.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Niall, would you want to add?
This is just really just a positive story or kind of, yeah. I mean, there's been lots of them. I'm struggling kind of to think of an exact example, but I think probably the way our own people, well, it's a mix of, there's two things. Our own people, the way they have reacted over the last few months. I mean, we have a fairly well-defined delivery methodology where we work with customers. We have a system that we have. It's a finely oiled system on how we implement the project. And there are parts of that, a decent parts of that require us to be physically there in front of the customer and working through this with a customer team. We're not necessarily very tech savvy at times, so you're better off physically in front of them, from our sales guys to the people that actually go and start the implementation, particularly in the early stages of that. But across our organization, and this is collaboration of 100+ people just getting their heads together in the first month or two to say, right, we usually do this on site, how can we make it work, how can it resonate with our customers? And they've quickly pivoted, and you know, as I said, I've been quite surprised. I mentioned earlier on, we've actually made some of our processes more efficient as a result, and our customers are coming on that journey. And as I said, some of our customers are, you know, they're insurance people who are not very technical side of things, but they're getting on board, and we're making stuff work remotely, and so that, I think, going forward, just ultimately it might lead to, you know, one thing that we have is we have consultants out in the field who spend, in particular in the US and Europe, who spend a lot of the time in airports and hotels and working with customers. We're starting to think, you know, maybe they can actually spend a little bit more time at home with their families in the future. Yeah. It's a positive thing. And positive from our customer point of view, because we get the implementations done a little bit more cheaply, because they don't have the travel bills and all that associated with it too. I think one other point that I'd like to make on just even that our own customers are reporting on, and it's not so much like, I think Europe we're much further ahead in the US in a lot of things in how insurance is sold. The model in the US is still very much of broker models, where someone has a local insurance broker in their local town, and they go down, particularly people of a certain age, you know, my parents' age and so on. That's how they've always bought insurance. And in that demographic, you know, less than 10% would have bought insurance digitally. They would have always relied on going to the local broker. The broker uses and gives them their insurance policy. We were looking at some stats from April and May. That 10% from 10% of that age demographic, it's gone to 90+% have now started buying their insurance digitally and are getting on board. So, you know, so it's great to see. I mean, that's the direction it's moving, and I think the industry has known that for years. It's certainly we're well ahead of it here in Europe, but in the US, it's taken, you know, certain demographics a long time to get to where they are, but they're gradually moving, and it's interesting and can only be beneficial from our point of view as a software provider, you know.
Okay, we have some questions here that I'm just going to go through with you both. That's okay. And I've had some discussions with this even yesterday as well. Some people who are applying for, you know, graduate positions or positions in general with organizations can be concerned about the dreaded word of ageism, you know. So, Michelle, like in terms of that, what sort of reassurance do you have to people that, you know, that it's never that this is not an issue when it comes to applying for either graduate positions or other roles, and that, you know, you do value life experience in addition to pure academic experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think to that end, there's a range of career options that you know, someone who wants to work with Glanbia can explore. Obviously, the graduate program is one of those, and then there are other options of other roles then within the organisation at varying different levels and in different functional areas. And to a certain extent, it isn't really about, you know, Glanbia. It's more in relation to the individual themselves and what they're looking for, the path that they want to take. Because I think by the nature of Glanbia of graduate programs anywhere, they're quite structured in terms of the development that they get and in terms of the nature of those programs. And that can work for a lot of people, but then for others, maybe think, actually, maybe that's not for me. There, you know, there's maybe other roles that I'd like to explore at maybe similar levels that are not within that construct. So for us, you know, we don't in any way prohibit or restrict applications for roles, graduate program or otherwise. It really is more in the context of, you know, what experience someone is coming with initially, what they're looking for themselves in terms of the career, and where's the right fit for them, whether it's with the graduate program or another opportunity. Okay.
And now, I mean, I know for your own businesses, obviously, when it comes to technical skills, you know, you need the hard technical skills. It's obviously fundamental for the role, but obviously Guidewire as a company values experience, maybe 25, 30 years of experience in other sectors, but maybe want to transition into the tech sector, you know, in maybe legal or marketing or communications. What sort of just what's your view on that, and, you know, what they can bring to a company like Guidewire?
Sorry, just to make sure that I answer the right question. Why not say?
Basically, I'm just trying to get across that, companies like Guidewire, while they do obviously have, a lot of their roles are very technical, that, you do value applications from people who have a broader, experience background from maybe other industries that would be relevant to various departments within Guidewire.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and I said, a lot of our roles, certainly in Dublin, are more technically focused. I mean, we hire people from all sorts of background, particularly people that have insurance background. It's quite important that you understand the insurance business and how that works. I mean, it's not a requirement for most grads coming into technical roles. That's learned on the job. But in terms of people that we've hired in the past, it's been, as I said, largely speaking, the type of roles in Dublin are mostly technical, but we've had people come from fresh graduates, first job out of college, to people that have, maybe have lived in another world and industry, and maybe whether it's insurance industry or banking industry or whatever, and went back to college and did a post-grad in tech. And for them to bring that I guess, world knowledge along with the tech skills, which might not be as polished as someone that does a 4-year undergrad versus someone that does an 18-month, postgrad. But, to bring that level of knowledge or experience is quite important too, I'm not sure if that addressed it.
No, absolutely. No, especially just to touch on the fact that, that there are career opportunities available for people who are willing to obviously put in the work in terms of postgraduate study to transition to a new sector such as your own.
I can think of plenty of places where we hired postgrads, that might have, I said, worked 10 years in a different industry prior to going into tech,
Okay. And Michelle, are there any jobs in Glanbia that may not have existed pre-COVID, or have there been the development of any new roles or functions within the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, over recent years, we've seen a lot of new capability build, and in the consumer industry, a lot of the focus now is on kind of online channels. And so the whole area of digital transformation is huge. So we've seen a range of roles within our IT organization that have obviously been created to support that. Niall talked about kind of cloud technology. We've had roles that we've had to now bring in where we're moving from on-premise IT systems into a cloud world. But equally as well, we have new roles as well that we've created around big strategic agendas for us, like sustainability, for example. So that wouldn't have been maybe something that would have been on our strategic radar maybe 5-10 years ago, whereas now that's huge importance for us across the organization. So we now have roles that have a purely sustainability focus as part of all of that as well. So there's a large number of roles that didn't exist a number of years ago that we have, and equally when we look 5 years forward, there's probably roles that we don't have today that we will have. So I think as our industry changes, as we come out of all of this, that's really going to shift requirements. And that works kind of two ways, because as we're bringing in more areas, and Niall referenced kind of AI and robotics and other things, that may change again the nature of work and roles within the organization, and kind of shift kind of what capabilities we're looking for in those roles.
And of a very specific question here, sorry, just in relation to Glanbia, and the students also asking about Guidewire. Do you have roles in the area of data analysis, or roles that those skills would be applicable to?
Yeah, absolutely, we do. So we have a fantastic business intelligence function that provides great data analytics support for the organization. So each year on a graduate program, we take in a number of roles into the business intelligence function, both in terms of kind of business analysis and also on the technical data analytics side as well. So answer is yes, we do. Okay,
and Niall, is that a function that you guys are looking for as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, a big part of what we do is data and analytics. I mean, in particular at a graduate level, I mean, what we tend to do is take a general graduate intake, into our group. Every year we're trying to build out our graduate program, make it more and more formal, and give people experience across different parts of the organization their first 2 years with Guidewire. And so the idea is to become a very rounded person, understand everything from data analytics to our core software to digital to how our PD team work, how our customer team works. If we want to specialize in specific areas like data and analytics, absolutely. We have quite a few teams focused in that area, and I think in particular, as the entire world moves to the cloud, data and analytics is going to become increasingly important over the next few years, and it's a big part of what we're selling at the moment.
I'm just going to get some closing thoughts from you both, and it's just in relation to a question we had here from someone who's highlighted the issue of mental health, I suppose, and how people have been challenged in that regard over the last few months. And people have found this really, really hard. Maybe they haven't had time to, finish their studies the way they wanted to. If they haven't, maybe their internship has been cancelled. Maybe they've had which puts them on the back foot at the very start of their career. I'm just when people can be thinking that maybe my job won't be there in a few years, or maybe the company aren't going to hire me like they said they would, and I'm not asking for the exact nitty-gritty of your own application processes, but what sort of reassurance would you have for graduates that employers do understand that it is a very difficult time for them, and that you are trying to help them make that transition into the working world as easy as possible, considering what's going on?
Yeah, and maybe just to start from a Glanbia perspective, this is a kind of a daily conversation with us in terms of how do we continue to support our people. And I mentioned already graduates who may be away from home, who are anxious about maybe family and so on, who are at home. We have people, who have, again, maybe childcare independence, and worried about them, worried about themselves and finding it, difficult maybe to balance everything at this particular point in time. So there's a couple of things that we put around it, and one is very important, that relationship with our line manager. So most of our line managers now are having daily calls with all of their team members, and really the purpose of that is to do that check-in, to see how people are doing, not just in terms of their work, but also doing more generally. We have an excellent employee assistance program that we run in conjunction with VHI, that's available free of charge to our employees and also to their broader families as well, which has been great at this time. We also developed a whole series of online resources that we've made available to our teams, just around dealing with anxiety, around resilience, and around other topics that are really, really relevant at this time. So we're again trying to make sure that we're putting enough resources, and communication huge. Really people want to know what's going on and keeping them up to date around all of that. So we've received very positive feedback around all those measures.
And Niall, we've got 2 minutes left here on today's panel discussion. But I suppose, what words of reassurance would you have for graduates that that the career paths are still there, that they are still valued in terms of what they can bring to organisations such as Guidewire?
Yeah, they're as I said, from when we shut down, certainly, or when we shut, I want to, our CEO always reminds us we haven't shut down. We're just working from home now, and when the world shut down, we're continuing business as usual. And as I said, we've had to adapt, and we've managed to successfully recruit 20 people since the world shut down, and we're continuing to recruit. There's roles open there across all locations all over the world. On you can see that on our careers website. So we'll continue that. As Michelle mentioned, we've done as much as possible. It's been absolutely front and center of what we've been doing to try and make sure our existing employees in particular are reassured, and new people are welcomed on board, and they're not felt like they're out in limbo. There's a long list of things, but I can pick a few things that we've looked at. For example, our CEO is every Monday has a session where he's calling Mondays with Mike, which is Mike Rosenbaum, who's our CEO, where the entire company dials in, and it's a random discussion on how people are being affected. It's questions for him to try and him to just try to reassure people that here's what we're doing. If you are at home and you have young children and you that's going to impact, don't worry. We're all in this situation. Let's just get on with it. alongside that, we're getting a weekly poll out there, because on just with 2 or 3 simple questions. How are you doing? How is the shutdown? To try to get the temperature of people worldwide and how they're getting on.
Okay.
And that can change from week to week, depending on people that were the first month, this is brilliant. 2 months in,
they're suffering.
And it's just trying to get that data and understand how we can help people.
Okay.
We're introducing things next month, because we're trying to strike a balance, because I think in a way, and I say this, I'm guilty of this myself, my own team are guilty of it at the time, because you're located at home, it's hard to have that work-life divide at times, because your office is here all the time. It's very easy at 10 o'clock at night to say, I'll just go in and answer that email. Whereas, so we're trying to encourage people
to switch off.
To switch off. Like, let's say in August, we're doing an entire company 2-day shutdown worldwide, and we're saying, everyone switch off for work, take
we don't want
a long weekend that doesn't come out of your normal vacation. We're trying to encourage people to take some vacation around it, because people just need to switch off from work. It's quite important. So, I mean, I guess those are some of the things that we mentioned. Michelle mentioned the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program we have, again, with Leah, which has been incredibly useful for some people. I know quite a few have used it in recent times, which is helpful.
Okay. Well, listen, thanks very much to you both for joining us here today. Very practical insights. We really do appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who joined us here today for this panel discussion.
All right, thanks. Thanks a lot.
All the best. Bye-bye. Thank you, Michelle.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.